I want to welcome you to our webinar on how to do faster data modeling with Looker and dbt. Today's event is being presented in collaboration with Looker and Fishtown Analytics, the creator of dbt. For today's agenda, we're going to start with some quick speaker introductions. We'll then set the stage for our topic of data modeling. We'll discuss both the Looker and dbt approaches to data modeling. And then we're really thrilled because we also have Drizly joining us today to share their experiences with these two solutions. Again, just use the Q&A widget and send us your questions at any point as we go through today's event content, which will run about 30 minutes. First up, you're going to hear from Rich Christie. Rich is a director with the Looker Alliances team, and he collaborates with our friends at Fishtown Analytics. If you hadn't heard, Looker is now officially part of Google Cloud. And Rich actually just passed 3 years with the Looker team this summer. We also have Erin Vaughn, Director of Customer Success from Fishtown Analytics, and she'll be presenting with Rich today. Erin's coming up on 4 years with Fishtown and is joining us from the Philly area. You'll notice that we have included on these slides our speaker email addresses, as well as our company websites and Twitter handles in case you'd like to connect with us directly or through social media. And joining the discussion from Drizly is Emily Hawkins. Emily is a data infrastructure lead and has been with Drizly for about 1.5 years and has also spent time with Wayfair, Hertz, and others. So we invite you to connect with us, and we're really grateful to have Emily joining us today, as well as all of you, and we're really thrilled to present this content. So I think at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to Rich. Rich, the floor is yours.
Thanks for the introduction, Kyle. So let's jump right in. For those of you who are not familiar, Looker is the leading enterprise data platform for business intelligence, data applications, and embedded analytics. There's really 3 pillars to the Looker technology. One, Looker is 100% in database. We don't have a proprietary ETL tool. We don't extract data in any form. 2, Looker is completely cloud native, extensible, and fully web-based. With Looker, you'll get full API support as well, so you can connect to all those third-party systems. And finally, number 3, behind the Looker data platform is LookML, Looker's powerful data modeling layer. This is where analysts model data and define metrics in a single, unified way. So, what is Looker's approach to data modeling? Looker's secret sauce is LookML, a code-based modeling language that lets you collaborate better on the same projects, i.e. Git branching, project imports, folders, etc. Ship quality code reliably from dev stage to production environments, unit testing, and what have you, and to ensure continuity, true Git version control history. This all frees up your engineers to focus on their core competencies, right? Not managing a broken development workflow. So, more specifically, what is LookML? LookML is a language for describing dimensions, aggregates, calculations, and data relationships in a SQL database. Looker uses a model written in LookML to construct SQL queries against a particular database. As such, it defines lots of different things, like how to join tables, how to define custom tables, how to define fields from the database, and new fields as well. So, how can multiple developers collaborate on the same project? With version control. Looker's data model is a version controlled in Git. This allows collaboration and iteration with the ability to easily roll back to previous versions if needed, to minimize the impact of unintended errors as well. Looker is the first modern data analytic platform that lets developers use the modern Git software development workflow and tools they love to leverage on a consistent basis. So, ultimately, Looker's platform via LookML offers a unified surface to access the truest, most up-to-date version of your company's data. This allows an organization to choose and design data experiences in a way that makes the most sense for their needs. And Looker powers a number of data-driven experiences. Number 1, beginning with your traditional modern business intelligence. Sunrun's a great example. They're bringing all their company data together to get a unified view of their customer, providing self-service analytics for install operations, sales pipeline management, and customer operations. But BI is just one data experience. We see companies working with data in very innovative ways, integrating it into every part of their business in ways that go well beyond reports and dashboards. Companies like Stripe, for example, have their sales reps have much more context on their customer calls with valuable usage data embedded within Salesforce. And with fresh, accurate data on hand, it's easy to optimize workflows with data. SalesLoft, as an example, was able to reduce customer churn with automated email campaigns if customer health drops, again, as an example. We're also seeing leading organizations deliver data-driven experiences by building data products and or monetizing their data. One of our customers, one of the top retailers in the world, frankly, built an entire custom application to help their teams maintain optimal inventory levels at their 4,000 plus stores nationwide. These are just some examples of how companies are delivering data experiences and shifting their focus from traditional reporting tools to platforms that integrate data. So with that being said, at this time, I'd like to pass it off to Erin from our partners at Fishtown Analytics to discuss DBT and Looker best practices.
Thanks for the introduction. For those of you who aren't familiar, DBT is the data transformation layer in the classic ETL, now ELT stack. It applies software engineering best practices to data transformation work like testing, documentation, and version control. I've been leading professional services and customer success at Fishtown Analytics for the past 4 years. I've implemented this stack that you see, plus Looker as the BI tool at dozens of companies. We love Looker and have seen so many companies fall in love with the powerful combination of these tools, so that's what I'm going to cover today. When you work with data, you get pretty obsessive about names and meanings. We joke regularly here that naming is hard. So I want to set up Emily's section of this event by explaining some key terms and concepts. When we talk about data modeling in today's presentation, we're going to focus on cleansing data, reshaping or pre-aggregating data, and creating metadata. Data modeling done with DBT plus Looker using version-controlled workflows and development environments can make your analytics team faster. But what do we mean by faster? Analysts often think of faster as how quickly they can fill a given request. When we start talking about faster at Fishtown Analytics, we're talking about a different approach to analytics. You wouldn't expect a CEO to approach a software engineer and say, you need to make this completely new app update by the end of the day. This type of request would be inappropriate because the engineering team scopes out their work in sprints and already has a set of deliverables that they're working on. Yet, I need this report by the end of the day is a very common request to an analyst. As we think about treating analytics code as a product that analysts serve to business users, it restructures how we prioritize short and long-term speed. So what does this actually look like? A lot of early-stage startups love Looker PDTs because they're a way for an analyst to quickly fulfill the type of request that we were just talking about, to just get the report available. And that's a completely reasonable thing to do and the fastest way to go from question to answer for that company. This is a snippet from a 99-line SQL query to aggregate some e-commerce tables and join them with some specific orders fields. But what happens when this PDT needs to be changed? It's possible that you built it and built it fairly recently. You can likely jump in and understand how this PDT relates to other views in your project and quickly figure out that the logic you want to change should be changed on line 27. For those of you without laser vision, this is changing how some country codes from an addresses table are categorized. What if you built it, but a long time ago, or someone else entirely built it? There's true overhead in refamiliarizing yourself with this specific query and how it relates to other views in your project. It may take an hour or two to find your way to line 27. This type of investment may lead you to simply creating another PDT to turn around the change quickly. Now you have slightly different logic in two places, but made the change fast. When the expectation to turn around changes quickly regularly results in creating a new PDT, It becomes challenging to manage and untangle what relies on what when future changes need to be made. We've done a few projects with companies who've used Looker for many years and had 3, 4, 500 plus PDTs. So where does DBT come into play? The above is the DAG generated by DBT docs for the same 99-line SQL query when I made it more modular with DBT. Each green square represents a source table from the raw data source. The STG, or staging models, handle all renaming and lightweight case statements. The intermediate models, ordered devices and payments aggregated, have very specific purpose and are named accordingly. The change we were trying to make before, line 27, is an alteration to the categorization of addresses. With this visual, it's now easier to see the staging addresses model and alter it, regardless of if I was the one who originally built the structure or not. Dimitri from Monzo captures this perfectly in the above quote. Their data stack is BigQuery plus DBT plus Looker. He says, we encourage our data analysts to spend maybe 30% longer answering a question if it means they do it in a way that's easily reproducible and benefits other people in the company. Switching to this more collaborative approach is often slower in the short term, but the speed that an individual analyst gives up means that other analysts, or me 6 months from now, and my business users are all able to work faster. Creating those 8 models on the prior slide in DBT and adding correct tests to them took me longer than to write the original 99-line query, but ultimately put a structure in place to more easily jump in and make changes later on. When we talk about faster today, that's what we're talking about. So with that frame around the conversation, I want to close my section with why our team at Fishtown loves pairing DBT with Looker. The first is Looker user attributes. We use user attributes in Looker views to select either the development or production tables from DBT. This means an analyst developing in their DBT dev environment can toggle between dev and prod in Looker to quickly test how modeling changes in DBT affect reports in Looker dashboards. DBT DAGs, as you saw in the example, are very easy to visualize to understand how models rely on one another to quickly make changes in the structure without needing to open and jump between individual models. Finally, the shared appreciation between the tools for version control in respect to analytics also means creating more trusted and reliable data for end users. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Emily.
Thank you, Erin. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily. I'm the data infrastructure lead at Drizly, and I definitely resonate so much with everything that Erin has just walked through with why Fishtown loves the combination of Looker and DBT. So I'm going to talk about the perspective of our story of how we just recently moved from our old BI tool onto Looker. And I'm going to talk about how Looker and DBT have really alleviated a lot of our issues that we had with our old BI tool, and how the combination also really helped us accelerate our transition onto Looker. I'm going to start with going over a brief history of the phases of analytics at Drizly. So phase 1, we're going to call some dashboards. This was the period between around 2014 and 2019 last year, where our BI tool did pretty much all of our visualization and data modeling and ingested data from a variety of sources, such as Redshift and MySQL. This was before our data team kind of went through our rebuild and discovered, the joys of DBT. Phase 2, we're going to call Empower Data Analysts. This was between June of 2019 and June of this year. So last year in June, we really started to rebuild our analytics team. We hired our analytics director. This is when I joined the team. and we kind of wanted to start from scratch with our data infrastructure. So this is when we started to implement DBT. In November of last year, we started our migration from Redshift to Snowflake, and our team really grew through this time. So we went through a team of about 2 business intelligence analysts to around total team of 9. Now we're in phase 3. So this is really where we're trying to empower our business users across the company. We're going through our migration to Looker, and now we really just want to empower the rest of the company to use the data that we've built over the past year with DBT and Snowflake and transitioning out of our old BI tool. Our most recent problem is that our business users were just very dependent on our team to go into the BI tool and update charts and dashboards. So things like changing a dimension, changing a date granularity, adding a filter, all of these things ended up being requests to the analytics team to go in and update on a daily basis. And because of this, our team was really stuck in this reactive mode because we were constantly responding to these one-off requests to change data visualizations or dashboards, either through one-off Slack requests or through BI tickets. And it kind of made it difficult for us to prioritize the bigger tasks that we as a team wanted to work on. And lastly, we had low trust that dashboards were accurate or maintained, that certain data sets were accurate or maintained. So we definitely got a lot of questions around, hey, is this dashboard something I can use? Is this data set trustworthy? Has this data set been updated? And that would cause a lot of strain on our resources as an analytics team to then, go in, investigate the dashboard, investigate the data sources, and determine if they were something that should be used or should not be used. And then from there, having us go in and update those dashboards and data sets so that they could be trustworthy for the rest of the business to use. So how did this manifest? I'm going to walk through some Slack messages that I found in our analytics help channel, which really help show the story of how this all kind of came about. So this first message we can see, someone is asking, do we have page rank data for catalog items? The cards I'm seeing haven't been updated in 5 to 12 months. So this is something we constantly were running into, where there was legacy data sets and dashboards that no one on our team was a part of building, and the people who did build them were not at the company anymore. So there were always, things like this where cards or dashboards had not been updated, and the people on our team, kind of had to rebuild or investigate if these data sets were still the most accurate thing to use. This next question is about getting assistance to get a visualization where they want it to be. So this is another request that we get pretty often, which is just kind of tweaking a visualization slightly to get it how our business users are envisioning. So this was just an issue with kind of the usability of our old BI tool. And with Looker, I feel like the UX is just much more intuitive, and I think our business users are catching on much more quickly on how to do things and how to make visualizations look how they would like them to look. Another example of this is we got a lot of requests just asking to change like a dimension or date granularity on certain visualizations. So in this example, someone is asking to create a visualization that is orders by state, by week or month, and then they link a other visualization saying similar to this one but by state. So this is just another example of just our business users not feeling as comfortable going in and making these edits themselves. And with Looker, I think we will have much more success with having our business users feel comfortable to go in and make these sorts of small changes, such as changing a chart from week to month or adding a dimension. This next question is really about the discoverability of data in our old BI tool. So this question is asking if we have data on out of stocks. So in our old tool, it was definitely more difficult to find what data exists, and not only if it exists, but if it was accurate and trustworthy. So along with questions like this, we'd also get questions on, hey, I found this data set, can I use it? So I think with our new Looker setup with the explorers, especially since we get to start kind of from scratch, hopefully we are going to see a very big decline in these sorts of questions, and just knowing that the UX in Looker makes it much easier for users to find which data they're looking for, especially the fact that we can add like descriptions and whatnot to the explorers and to the data within each explorer. These last two examples just show some common BI requests that would come in through our ticketing system. So this first one is on adding a column to a couple of data sets. And just due to our limitations of our old tool, the way we would normally handle these requests would just be to add a column to the data sets that were requested through DBT. And this resulted in just having very wide tables that had a lot of different information on them. And, you know, we could argue if those columns even belonged on those tables or not. But with Looker's ability to kind of take our data modeling the last mile and join things together where they need to be joined, this question just becomes much easier to answer, and we can much more easily surface the correct data in the correct places for our business users to use. And this last example is also around just the business users' like confidence in editing cards or visualizations on their own. So as I mentioned earlier, we're hoping with Looker that our business users just have an increased confidence in being able to make edits to existing visualizations and even being able to create these visualizations from scratch themselves. Before we transitioned to Looker, we really did try to solve these issues on our own. So we cut over a lot of our old models into DBT and Snowflake, and we would connect our old BI tool to those like Snowflake verified data sets and tried to point people to those data sets. And we also went through depreciating all of our Redshift models and moving those into DBT and Snowflake. Even though we did, make all of these improvements, we still found that business users still needed help for things like adding a filter, changing a dimension. The analysts on the team, we really did not enjoy working in our old BI tool. And just when COVID happened, Drizly's business really skyrocketed, and we were met with many new requests and a lot more pressure on the things that our team spent time on. So in May of this year, we decided to do a BI tool bake-off where we trialed a couple of BI tools to figure out what would be the best fit for our team and what would be the best fit to solve our problems. So we really loved Looker. Obviously, we chose to go forward with Looker. We loved how Looker organizes and presents information with things like explores. We loved how we could curate the explores to customize for what our business users needed. And our analysts, we just loved using Looker. We loved the concept around putting everything into code, into LookML. We loved how customizable everything was. And we've already been starting to host some Looker trainings across the company as we've been cutting a lot of our data over into Looker for our business users to start using. And our transition to Looker with our current use of DBT really made it so easy, and this combination has just proved to be so powerful for us. So with our data team using Looker and DBT, our analysts really get to stay working in code. So with DBT, that's like SQL and Jinja, and with Looker, it's LookML. The whole process is version controlled, which we love. So we have our DBT Git repo and we have our Looker Git repo. So everything is version controlled, and we have a code review process for both of these tools. And the really great thing about the combination of using these tools together is that DBT can really handle like the large and complex data modeling tasks, and then Looker can handle putting the final puzzle pieces together, which is really powerful and really allows us to focus on how the data best fits together for each business unit and how they're going to be using the data to answer their most important questions. And I wanted to point out that one of the really great things about the DBT and Looker combination is the fact that both of them rely very heavily on version control, mainly through having a centralized Git repo for the team. So when we first moved to DBT, one of the really great selling points on it was that we as an analytics team could move all of our code into a central version controlled location and start to have a process around code reviews and making sure that everyone had visibility into what was going on with our data modeling. And similarly with Looker, it's also version controlled through our Looker Git repo, and we can similarly have a process for code review. And it's just a really nice combination using both of these tools and having both of these complementary code review and version control processes. So it's been around a month where we've really started letting business users into Looker with the initial data that we have in there. And, you know, they're already loving it. So this is one Slack message I got. I just filtered on my first aggregation in Looker, and wow, did it feel good. So, you know, business users are really loving the like more enhanced functionality of Looker. In our old BI tool, a lot of things like this where like you couldn't filter on aggregations was very frustrating for a lot of our business users because it limited the functionality of what they could look at, and it put more of the burden on the analytics team to like pre-aggregate things or predefine things before they went into the BI tool. Additionally, we're already starting to see non-analytics team members jump in and answer other fellow coworkers' questions. So this question came into our analytics help channel asking if a certain report existed, and one of our other account managers ended up jumping in with a link to a visualization in Looker. So this is really great to see that our business users are already embracing Looker and are already feeling comfortable enough to share that information with others. So where are we going from here? We just finished our Looker Jumpstart program, which was really incredible. We had the most amazing support, and we're pretty much through our initial phases of implementation and cutover. We're hoping to be cut over to Looker by the end of the year and fully off of our old BI tool. We're holding Looker trainings across the company. We're onboarding new employees with Looker trainings, and we're already identifying power users across a variety of teams to help support training within their teams. And we're also going to start hosting analytics office hours, where business users can come with any analytics and or Looker related questions. In the next couple months, we are really hoping to see high adoption of Looker across the business. And with the Looker content activity feature, we will actually be able to measure this. So using this, you can actually see how users are interacting with the data, what they're using, how they're using it, if they're logging in, what content they're clicking on, and so much more. So this feature is going to be a really great tool for us to actually measure what's going right and what could be improved. We're also hoping to see that better data questions are being asked, and we're hoping to see that more people feel confident and empowered in answering their own data questions using Looker. And with that, we will move on to some Q&A.
Okay, I guess it helps if I take myself off mute. All right, great work. Thanks a lot, Emily, as well as Rich and Aaron. Really great presentation. At this point, we can use our remaining time we have left for the hour to address any questions that you have. Please use the Q&A widget, send us your questions now, and we'll try and take as many as we can get to. We did have a few questions about the event recording. And this webinar is being recorded, and you can actually view that recording within a few hours, definitely within about 24 hours, and that will be available at the same link that you used to enter this event. So the link does not change. We will also be sending out a post-show email to everyone who has registered with that link again to view the on-demand recording, and that should come through your inbox here either tomorrow afternoon or Monday. And then looking at some of the questions that came through from the audience, looks like a question for Emily. Are there certain members of your data team who spend more time in DBT versus Looker, or this one role?
Hi, yeah, thanks for the question. Currently, right now, our data team pretty much spends equal time between DBT and Looker. But now that we're going through our implementation right now, maybe it leans more towards Looker at the moment, but we don't really have a role specific for one or the other tools.
Wonderful. And another one that came through, I guess maybe this would be for Aaron. How does Fishtown Analytics structure its Looker instance?
Yeah, so we currently have a single Looker project, and we have views that, as I mentioned, I think in my part of the presentation, kind of select from dev or prod DBT models, depending on if you're in development or production in Looker. And so we have a single project with those views set up and use that as our kind of workflow.
Wonderful. And this one, I guess, came through, might be a question for the Looker team. When does your team recommend DBT versus just using Looker PDTs?
Awesome. So I can take that. As far as Looker is concerned, we feel that PDTs are a great way for you to reshape data on the fly and to prototype, typically, looking at data in different ways and reaggregating it. But recommend that if you have an upstream tool that you can use, that after prototyping and solidifying the data definitions, that you push it back upstream.
Wonderful. And that was Eric Carr, one of our Looker solution engineers. I forgot to introduce Eric at the beginning, but he's here to help us with some Q&A. Thanks a lot, Eric. Probably have a couple more here for you. Looks like there's a lot of questions coming through, so we're going to try and get to as many as we can here. Let's see, what's next? This one, I guess, maybe could be for anyone. So a lot of data teams like to use Looker PDTs to do some quick modeling and then move it into DBT for production. Is this a recommended workflow, and why or why not?
Yeah, this is Erin.
This is Eric again.
Oh,
go
for
ahead.
it, Eric.
Go ahead, for sure. Now, I was going to say that kind of ties into exactly what we were just talking about. PDTs are an excellent way of prototyping, but for production workflows, it does make sense to have a tool like DBT take over that responsibility.
And I think it also goes hand in hand with what Emily was saying, where on the Drizly team, right now, analytics team members are working in DBT and Looker, but there are teams that kind of split and differentiate there. So it might be easier for someone who's spending all of their time in Looker to prototype with a PDT. And once that is used very regularly, to have someone on the transformation side actually bring that into their DBT project.
Wonderful. Erin, I got another one that actually probably for you as well. Would DBT be able to visualize the DAGs?
Yes, so the DAG that I shared in one of the slides is directly from DBT docs. So because each model in DBT uses a ref function, it is able to build that DAG automatically from your project.
Wonderful. And another attendee is asking, what made you move away from Redshift towards Snowflake? I guess that's a question for Emily.
Yeah. So as our team grew, we were already kind of starting to see some concurrency issues with Redshift. Another reason we are heavily using like semi-structured data within our event stream, and Snowflake really handles this data as like a first-class citizen, whereas in Redshift, it just took a lot more hacking to work with it effectively.
Wonderful. And another one, that's probably for you, Emily, as well, says, Emily, what is the makeup of the analytics team of 9 for your org?
Yeah, so right now we have one analytics director, one data scientist, one data engineer, and then 6 of us on the BI side. And we actually just hired one more data scientist, and we're hiring for another data scientist and 2 more people for the BI team. And
just as an add-on to that, in the resources widget here, we actually have a link to Drizly's job openings. So check that out. It's just a URL available that we've added. So be good to highlight those and see if there's anything that looks attractive for the folks on the line. Another question, it's for Emily. Eric, you might want to also jump in. It says, when you are updating a date granularity, are you making a new view or creating a parameterized version of the time series so the user can change the granularity themselves?
Yeah, so in my examples, I was really talking about the issues with our old tool of granularity. So it wasn't easy for our business users to go in and change. But I know in Looker, there's a lot more functionality that makes this much easier, which I think Eric can talk to a little bit.
For sure. So we can create parameters in Looker that allow us to select that granularity. And recently in Looker, we've got aggregate awareness as well. So you can create views that take that granularity and look at tables in a different way. So if you have different tables that are already pre-aggregated at a particular level of granularity, Looker can select those on the fly for you as well. So I would say, yes, parameterized would be the way to go from a Looker standpoint.
Wonderful. And maybe another one for you too. Do you use any PDTs or all transforms done in DBT?
Yeah, so currently, as we're kind of on our initial phases of implementation, we are not using PDTs at the moment, but I know that there are some good use cases for them that we'll probably consider a little later down the line.
Awesome. Eric, you want to add anything to that, or are we good?
Again, it just goes back to the point of PDTs are a great way to prototype, especially if you're trying to look at things from a different set of granularities. You don't necessarily need to contact your ETL team or change your ETL pipeline until you're pretty sure of what it is that you want to have in your final data warehouse.
Great. And maybe, Aaron, you can tackle this one for first response. Where do you generally draw the line between changes in LookML versus DBT?
Yeah, so I think this is another resource that's linked for everyone. But our CEO, Tristan, wrote an article about this. We really find that doing all of your transformations in DBT allows you to take advantage of those in Looker and also allow that same logic to be used by other team members who might use another BI tool or a Jupyter Notebook or anything else on the data science side. So we really do all of our data transformation in DBT and then take advantage of that in Looker.
Great. Someone also asked, do companies use Looker for FP&A, or is it the best used for more operational type data?
And I'll speak to that as well. I would say that generally we have companies using Looker for all kinds of things. It's a general purpose data platform, and it can be used for analytics, it can be used for operational data. I would say that for the majority of what we see is actually more an analytical use than operational, but it's certainly something that you can use for both.
Wonderful. And I have a scenario-based question here. So one of our attendees, they said they have non-analyst colleagues who have the ability to look at LookML, but since they're not part of the tech org, they don't have GitHub and understand how we create our underlying data models in LookML. So how would this work with DBT?
I'm happy to jump in for that. So, maintaining two repositories does add an additional level of complexity. And so for someone who is just kind of a consumer of the data in Looker, DBT docs are a great way for them to get access. So the DAG that was shown, that is hosted on a DBT docs site. And so oftentimes we find that people will link to that in their Looker repository so that users can take a look at, how certain final models that are being pulled in as Looker views are kind of built and maintained.
Wonderful. Lots of great questions, guys. Thanks for sending them all. We've got a bunch still here to go through. We'll try and get through as many as we can. So someone was actually checking out our resources. They checked out the blog. How do you decide what to model in DBT versus Looker or versus LookML? And they love the resource. They asked the question, though, what advice do you have on this topic of data modeling and starting with LookML? Maybe, Eric, you can help us with that one. Eric, if you're there, you might be on mute still.
Yep, sorry about that. I was just trying to find the question. Maybe you could read through it again.
Yeah, it's the question. It's actually from Adam. It says, "What advice do you have on this topic of data modeling and starting with LookML?"
Okay, I see it. Thank you. So, as far as again, using LookML, we can scan through the database and we can get started looking at the data very quickly and then go back and forth in an agile process. So using LookML, it lets us apply business rules directly on top of the data without having to go back and actually change the underlying data structures. It's not going to be perfect for every scenario, right? But starting off, scanning through your current data warehouse, your current operational data stores, et cetera, and looking at the data and beginning to ask the questions together with your business users, what do we need to see? What needs to change? You can do this in kind of an iterative fashion. And once you have a better idea of that, then the LookML model can potentially, in some cases, go back upstream to your ETL pipeline. And in some other cases, the the LookML itself is sufficient to apply those business rules without having to do actual data transformations in the physical data structure.
Wonderful. And maybe this is one for Aaron. So it's asking how DBT parallel processes the ETL jobs.
I'm not sure the full question here. Maybe we can skip that one.
Okay, yeah, no worries. The person that asked that can maybe clarify a little. We can circle back with that one. This might, I don't know if we're able to address it here at the end with the time we have, but someone asks if you can please go over the step-by-step how DBT and Looker work together, describing an example of the process from ingestions to insights. Maybe there's a high-level way we can review that. Or we might have to take that offline, because I know it's kind of a detailed question. Does anybody want to try and tackle that one?
I'm happy to talk to it. Emily, maybe you want to talk about how Drizly does it, and then I can fill in with what we've seen other companies do as well.
Yeah, sure. So step by step. So first, the data comes into Snowflake. We have our DBT data models, read from our sources, do some transformations. We have our nice outputted data model. Looker reads the outputted data models. We set up, if there should be any joins, if there should be any calculated fields we need to do in Looker, setting up the explorers. And then from there, the business users can, select the data sets they're interested in, make dashboards, make visualizations. Hopefully that answers the question.
Wonderful. Yeah, we have a few more. Go ahead, Erin.
Oh, go for it. No, I was just going to say, I often find that I will have kind of two screens, one with my DBT project and one with LookML. And so as I'm making changes to the project in DBT, I'm doing the same on the Looker side. So I can have two kind of coordinated pull requests to potentially add a new table or new fields in DBT, and then also add those on the Looker side.
Wonderful. And Emma, there's a few questions directly for you here. So I'm just going to go through them quickly. Have you implemented any end-to-end testing for your data pipeline?
Yeah, so most of our testing is through the DBT tests. So after our models run, our DBT tests run for the things we have specified. So that is our main point of testing right now.
Someone also asked you, how did you decide what dimensions to build in LookML? And how does the business requirement process look like?
Maybe I'm not understanding this 100% correctly, but we're not actually building dimensions in Looker. So it's just kind of pulling in from the table we have that DBT built in Snowflake. And then from there we can add, custom dimensions, or maybe some custom measures if we're turning, a integer value to a string value for a dimension. But other than that, we're not really actually building our models in LookML. Not sure if that's what you're asking, but.
All good. Another person also asked, Emily, with DBT as part of your ecosystem, are you effectively eliminating the need to develop any derived tables in Looker, such as NDT, PDT, etc.?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, we don't use the PDTs currently, but I agree with Eric and Aaron that there's a good use case for them for things like prototyping.
All right.
It also goes back as well to the types of skills that you have on the team. So let's say we have people who are very skilled in Looker, but a much smaller team that's skilled in DBT or in ETL, where there's more controls around that. Obviously, we can prototype using NDTs very, very quickly. And somebody who is a business analyst could essentially take on that responsibility as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be someone who's a data engineer.
Awesome. All right, coming to the end here, we'll take a few more. How do you decide what logic is simple enough, and simple is in quotes, to keep in Looker derived tables versus what do you escalate to DBT? And I'm not sure who wants to take that one. We might be still muted.
I mean, I can speak to that in general, not specifically to Emily's particular case, but once again, if we're doing something in an NDT or a PDT, it's something that a business analyst could build out and then push into the model. If that is performance, to the extent where we don't need to build this on a 5-minute basis, or it's not really real-time data, it builds once a day, then if the performance is sufficient, we can leave that as a derived table or PDT. If we need something that is more streaming, if it's more real time, if it's an aggregate of some sort that really aggregates millions or billions of rows, then that's definitely something that we push to DBT, right? And that's an extreme example, but I think that's typically where I would draw the line.
Great. And then a question for you, Aaron. Did you say your model connection to your warehouse changes depending on whether in dev mode or not, or do you have a separate Looker instance?
I was just trying to find the link to send to this question asker. I'll send her a link, but essentially we have a user attribute set in the selection of the table. So in each view in Looker, it says select, and then it's an if statement. And basically, if the development is turned on in Looker, it selects from whatever user attribute is set for that user. And so in our internal Fishtown Analytics project, that would select from DBT Aaron schema. But if development is turned off, it's going to select from our analytics schema or our production schema.
Wonderful. And one of our attendees is a master's student and was asking where they can learn Looker and see if there's any online training. So yeah, basically www.looker.com is our main website, and there is a resources section in there that has a bunch of assets, collateral, white papers to do kind of a general education and understanding. And then we also have some self-guided learning modules as well as in-depth like certification classes that are more hands-on if you really want to deep dive into the product. But looker.com is probably the best place to start for that. And then again, check out our resources widget here because there is some files that we've added there to also kind of give you an overview as you start down that path. Someone is asking, can Emily describe their code review process some more?
Sure, yeah. So say we want to make a change in our DBT models or we're adding a brand new model, we would make the changes on like our Git branch, push it to our repo, open a pull request. You would, add people on our team to code review. We have a style guide, and we have a, checklist of things to go through in the pull request. And yeah, once it's approved, push it, prod, and there you go.
Wonderful. Okay, moving up the list here. What is the best way to tackle long code validation duration in Looker? Maybe, I don't know if Eric, you'd be the right person to answer that one.
Yeah, there are some pointers that I can provide to this. It's a little bit more of a complicated topic than I can probably address quickly.
Fair enough. Let's see here. Do you have any tips on the structure of the projects and models in Looker?
Again, we've got quite a number of best practices. Again, we can point to those. That's out in discourse.looker.com. We do publish a best practices guide to structuring projects, etc. Looker currently has a folder structure that you can create. This is a relatively new feature, so we do recommend that you structure it in a particular way to make it easier to find, and that you use project inheritance, so that there's object-oriented inheritance of different pieces of your project as well.
Awesome, thank you. And someone's asking, I guess probably for Emily, how was the transition from a SQL workflow to LookML type workflow?
Sure. I guess I wouldn't say there was a transition. We still very much work in SQL every day. I personally thought the transition to learning LookML was very simple, especially if you are versed in like SQL and maybe some other programming languages. It was very easy to catch on to, but that's just my personal experience.
Emily, you mentioned your team is now up to 9 people. What is the total company size of Drizly?
Yeah, I believe we're at around 250-ish total at Drizly now.
Wonderful. Okay. Let's see. And this may be for Aaron, do DBT processes transform data using databases through SQL like PDT?
Yes, so DBT is almost entirely SQL-based. There is a Jinja templating language, but essentially it's files that reference each other, and the files themselves are just single select statements in SQL.
Wonderful. And Eric, this is one that you might like. What are some of the features of Looker that you think are underutilized?
That's a great question. Generally, perhaps the actions within Looker, I think, may be underutilized. The Looker lets you build out actions that you can have directly within your dashboards or your looks. So someone could, for example, build out a form that sends out an email, right? Or scheduling, so that you could schedule something to be sent downstream to something like Zapier that would kick off a workflow. Using that to really drive your workflows with data automatically. And I think that those are probably underused features.
Wonderful. And I think we're going to take 2 last questions here. For Emily, can you talk about the role of the data engineer versus that of the BI developers? I'm just kind of wondering, where's the line drawn and how the roles might overlap or prevent from overlapping?
Yeah, so there definitely is some overlap, but I'd say that our data engineer is obviously much more technical. He works much more on the side of like how to bring in data into Snowflake, things like using Snowpipes, using Fivetran. We also have some other processes that bring in like our clickstream data from our website and app, and just more of the like technical implementation side of like DBT and some of our other tools, along with like being able to schedule our jobs that run and all of that. BI, we are building the data models. We're like using that data that our data engineer has been able to bring in to Snowflake for us. So yeah, I think that's the main difference.
Wonderful. And thank you to the audience for you guys sending so many questions. We actually just ran out of time and didn't get to all of them. I have about 10 that we'll just follow up with you all directly and give you an answer via email. But really appreciate all this participation. I don't think I've ever seen so many questions come through for a webinar. So really great to see that everybody's interested in our topic. Big thank you to Rich and Aaron and Emily for delivering today's content. Please check out the resources we have available in the widget. As I mentioned, we did record the event, and you'll get an email follow-up within the next day or 2 that has a link to view that recording. And you can also just hit the same link you used to access today's live event. The link does not change. So that will automatically archive and should be available here in a few hours. So again, big thank you to Fishtown Analytics for helping us deliver this event. Big thank you to Drizly for sharing all this wonderful insight. And thank you as well to all of our attendees who joined us here today. So that ends today's webcast. If you have any questions, you can check us out on our respective websites. My direct email is kyleblair@google.com in case you have any other lingering questions. So thank you again and have a great afternoon.